Hello, everyone. Welcome to TVNweather.com's podcast, Never Stop Chasing. And this is a very special show for us. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty nervous right now. James Spann is someone I really respect. If you haven't heard of James Spann, which most people have, then you'll see why so many people consider him a hero more than a meteorologist. And he's award-winning, life-saving, and thanks for being on our show, James.
Reed, it is an honor for me to be here. You're way too kind. This is going to be good. This will be a fun show. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I think what makes you so unique, and I've watched a lot of newscasts and a lot of meteorologists on television that will be doing severe weather coverage, and they'll be showing a shelf cloud and calling it a wall cloud, and that's one of our pet peeves as storm chasers. But when I watched your newscast, I noticed that you have the knowledge of storm structure of a storm chaser. You've got the scientific knowledge of a research meteorologist, but you can also deliver warning information, and this is most importantly in a concise manner that people understand. And unlike me, you can remain calm, or at least seem to remain calm during your newscast because that would probably excite panic. But your voice too has this intensity, this calm intensity, where it's like this community needs to take cover. And as I was doing research, I also learned your encyclopedic knowledge of the geography of Alabama, which is huge because in Dixie Alley, there are so many storms and so many communities and small communities. And one thing you're great at is keeping up with the multitude of storms and also the multitude of communities in the path. And one thing I also noticed is that a lot of people say, and they come up to me and they're like, yeah, you should be a weatherman. They get paid for being wrong, and how that's so off base for the most part. But when I've chased in Dixie Alley and in the Southeast quite a bit since the early 2000s, and I always heard the name James Spann. And it was totally different because they look at you as a hero and as a lifesaver. And we've seen that directly on the April 27th outbreak. We were helping out with search and rescue with the Alabama Task Force 1. And there were people that said, I was watching James Spann's live coverage, and he personally saved my life. And that's I have nothing but respect. And thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thanks, James.
And so tell us, how did you first get into weather?
I was born with it. I think all of us were born with this. We can't help it. I don't know why. Some people have it and some people don't. But I have been fascinated by storms as long as I can remember. And what's really strange, I have no memories of my life before first grade. Most people remember, kindergarten. I have no recollection of my life before I was 5 years old. But in first grade, I just loved storms. I loved them. And I could not wait for the next one. Where most children, they're kind of afraid. They have phobias. So I just loved them. And then as an older child, I grew up in Tuscaloosa. I lived in a small town in South Alabama called Greenville. Moved to Tuscaloosa when I was in fifth grade. And Tuscaloosa has some of the most unique weather on the planet. Mm-hmm. And when I was a senior in high school, we had the super outbreak, which was April 3rd, 4th, 1974. And that was a life-changing experience for me. I think all of us, there was that moment where things changed, where your interest in weather went from being kind of a casual hobby thing to something that was serious. And for me, the super outbreak did that. The school allowed me several days off to volunteer. My hobby then was ham radio. And I was a volunteer spotter. We never called ourselves chasers, but we were just spotters. And I worked 3 days in the field after that. It was on a Wednesday night, and the first assignment where they sent me that night was at the emergency room of a small community hospital in a town called Jasper, Alabama. That was hit very hard, and I don't know why, but they put me in the emergency room. And I'm telling you guys, I saw things that night that would change my life. I lost my innocence that night. I was a child that loved storms. I wanted them. I wanted tornadoes. I loved the sound of the teletype machines. I could almost, I could tell you there was a tornado warning coming because of the way the teletype clackers sounded. But that night, seeing the grotesque nature of the wounds that were people that were being brought in, that there's something way beyond this, and it affects people in a very distinct and serious way. And that kind of set me on the journey that I'm still on today, was that night way back in 1974.
Yeah, and I think we had the similar experience as storm chasers. I remember just loving storms from as far as I can remember. And I was a science nerd growing up. I collected insects for 10 years and caught an eastern Hercules beetle and then retired from that. major science nerd, but the passion of weather was always overwhelming. And I remember chasing the May 3rd, 1999 tornado. The F5 was the first one that we chased, and coming across that damage. I mean, you see the dark side of tornado chasing or of tornadoes right away, and but it's more fulfilling because we do what we love, and at the same time we're helping people, and especially you, James, down there in Dixie Alley, which is such a unique area because you get the tornado outbreaks are so different than the plains. You get very isolated storms here. They'll happen at late afternoon or evening. You have helicopter coverage, and I know that when we chase out there, I mean, we didn't see tornadoes for 10 years when we were out in Dixie Alley. They're hard to see. You've got trees. They're moving at 60. They're wrapped in rain. And I can imagine how difficult it must be to cover not only the number of storms, but how fast moving they are, and also the population density. And you get winter weather. You had that recent ice storm, and also the tropical weather too. So.
And James, you said they sent you out for a few days. How did you do it back then? Did you have like a hand analysis? I mean.
We were just rank amateurs. I was a volunteer. We worked out of the old civil defense office. They called emergency management civil defense back in the 70s. And, hardly nobody had any formal training in weather. We were all kids, but we loved it. And I'll tell you what really turned me onto it, in addition to working those events, were the writings of two guys. One was a guy named Al Moeller.
Okay.
And the other guy was a guy named Chuck Doswell. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you know those guys or not, but they really, I would stay up for hours and hours reading their papers and their work on severe convective local storms. And it was just a good combination of that and the experiences really sucked me into this when I was pretty young. And really back in those days here where we are, nobody's going to tell you in high school that meteorology is a viable career option back in those days. Nobody tells you that. In my first major in college, I was an electrical engineer. And I just thought, well, that's just what I'm going to do. But I couldn't get away from it. And we had event after. The 70s were wild. I mean, it was unbelievable. After the 74 super outbreak, we had a big tornado in 75 in Tuscaloosa. Birmingham had an EF5 in 1977. And Dr. Fujita, I remember him telling the Weather Service, the head of the Weather Service, Bob Ferry, that he was thinking about making that an F6. And
really?
All of this stuff affected me to this incredible degree. So it was just a matter of timing. I guess it was meant to be. And Dixie Alley is different. And let me just say this, Reed, it's funny. I hear a lot of guys sniping about who has the most tornadoes and, we've got more than you do. And that doesn't make any sense because you're comparing apples to oranges.
Exactly.
It's radically different. It is different circumstances. They're just different. So I think that a lot of us just don't even want to go there. We all have a lot of tornadoes. We have a lot of severe weather. They're just different. And where we are, like you say, Reed, we are your worst nightmare as a storm chaser.
Got that right.
You've been over here. You know that so many of our tornadoes happen in the middle of the night. So many of them are wrapped in rain. So many of them are obscured by trees, all these pine trees. We're at the foothills of the Appalachians. We've got a 2,400-foot ridge here in this state.
Reed calls it Vietnam.
Well, they say that.
It is. I mean, it's horrible. So
it's like the jungles because I know on April 15th, 2011, we were chasing the Jackson, Mississippi tornado. We drove all night and we're waiting at the Mississippi River, and we saw this storm at like 7:45 in the morning just roaring across northern Louisiana, and it put down its first strong tornado just west of Jackson at 10:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
And they can happen anytime, and they're hard to keep up with.
And why is that? Why can they happen compared to, like, the plains?
I believe it's because of the lack of a cap. Is that right, James?
Oh, yeah. We rarely have the big cap like you guys have. And I was going to point out what happened a year ago, yesterday. We had a tornado outbreak basically between midnight and 6 a.m., and it killed two people in Jefferson County, which is the county which Birmingham is located. One of those that was killed was a 16-year-old girl, precious girl, brilliant, her life in front of her, and they didn't hear the warning. The warnings were excellent. But it was a family that thought you're supposed to hear these stinking sirens. And you go, I'm cranky about that. But that's what started me on this tirade against sirens. But that's an example of the middle of the night type tornadoes that we can have here. And we tend to work in a different kind of air mass. We can have these instability values that stay excessively high at night and during the day with these high dew points. And they're HP storms. They're not the LP that you guys typically have. It's just a whole radically different set of circumstances. So I don't like comparing Dixie Alley to traditional Tornado Alley. We both have a lot.
Yeah, and it's totally different. I remember we chased on Christmas Day just recently, and it's almost like a tropical system because you get those feeder bands way out ahead of the main front. And when we chase in the plains, we're used to being focused on the dry line. And honestly, it's pretty easy to find the tornadoes and chase them. And you have news helicopters covering them for the stations. And out there, I know that's difficult. You said you don't have the helicopters to depend on, which makes it more difficult to get the warning out. But out in Dixie Alley, I mean, just wave after wave of tornadoes. And we did search and rescue in Mobile, and they had warning of 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah. I called that one in actually 3 different times.
Yeah, and I know one of the first events that you covered, or one of the events, was it December 2000, which showed that was there a
December
strong
16th,
tornado. December 16th, 2000. There was an F4 in Tuscaloosa. And could you talk a little bit about that coverage? I mean, that just didn't happen anytime.
That's a reminder that we have 2 very distinct seasons here. We have spring, March, April, May, but this fall season, it's a big deal. And it seems like every time we have a tornado in November, December, the national media gets it wrong. They always say rare, December tornado. So what do you mean rare? I mean, we have these things all the time. It is just as important as the spring season. So that was a fall season tornado in 2000, and that was about a little over 12 years ago. And it killed 11 people in the city of Tuscaloosa. And that was a little challenging. Anytime you have these outbreaks around Christmas, and you guys know that because you work, the Christmas Day event, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You're short-staffed. Typically, you don't have everybody in place. You got vacations going on, and it was kind of like that. And we had kind of a skeleton crew. It was a Saturday, right before Christmas, and a lot of people that day were out shopping. And we caught it on the old tower cam, the old system, and probably it stayed on the air for, I guess, maybe about 18 minutes. And
really,
the loss of life, that was very tragic in that case. We had a trailer park hit. And that's another thing here in our state. Away from municipalities, we have a pretty large percentage of the population living in mobile homes. And most of those that died that day of the 11 that were killed, we had many in mobile homes. We had many in cars. Happened early that afternoon. And one of the things that I will never forget, the Tuscaloosa News on their front page the next day had this paper of a man, an African-American, carrying out what seemed to be the lifeless body of a Caucasian child. It was very touching, and that's what we're about. A lot of people think we're still racist and all this down here. It was an amazing picture, and what's really cool, that girl lived. And I got a graduation invitation from her last year. Her name is Whitney Crowder, and the man's name is Michael Harris. And
that's
Michael
awesome.
is a tremendous hero. So that's the one vision I have of that. But, that was a classic example of a fall tornado outbreak that's so deadly here.
Yeah, and then there's the April 8, 1998. I've done all kinds of research on you here. And that was an F5 tornado that killed 32 people. And I see you were on the air for 10 hours straight. What was that experience like?
What happened with that? For this station, I work for the ABC affiliate in this market. And again, this is Birmingham. We're market size number 39. And for years, I had worked for another channel. And that channel was bought, and they changed affiliation, and had the opportunity to come to work for a startup. And it took guts. I mean, I risked a lot to come to work here. But one of the things they did, they gave me full control. And I am blessed. Most TV weather people do not have full control. But by full control, that means in terms of interrupting programming, I can go on and stay on as long as I want. I don't have to call anybody. I don't have to get any approval. I just go on the air. And that event in 1998 was the first event in which we really had a distinct advantage in the aggressive long-form weather coverage. Up until the time I joined this group in 1996, I never had the freedom to go on the air and stay on the air. The mandate was to go on and come off, go on and come off. And if you had football or something going on, you couldn't do anything sometimes. So all of a sudden, I had full control, and on that date, I exercised my freedom to do that. And, we went on in the afternoon and got off, at midnight or something. And that was Oklahoma City's always been this way. What those guys do out there, Gary and Mike and They have done this, but we have not. But that was really something that I think we learned how to do. We kind of grew up that day. It was a horrible F5 that killed 32 people. In Jefferson County, it killed 2 more in St. Clair County. Happened at night. There was not one single photograph of that.
Really?
Not one single video. And I'm thinking, it's too bad you guys weren't here or somebody, because we have no documentation. It was
you think it was because it was rain wrapped, you think?
It was rain wrapped. The only evidence we have on the tower cameras, we could see the power grid going off. And we couldn't even see power flashes, but we could see the lights going off progressively as it passed through the western part of the county out there.
Wow.
But it was a horrid situation. One of my best friends now that I met through that, his 8-year-old son was killed. They lived in a western suburb of Birmingham, and they were taken aloft, and the 8-year-old boy had a severe head injury while he was aloft. And one of the things that good has come out of that is that the research being done locally by UAB Hospital on helmets and tornado safety has been very important, and we've learned how important having a helmet is. And that's one of the things we're pushing now, and that came out of that 1998 outbreak, because that child would have lived if he would have had a bicycle helmet, a batting helmet, something to protect his head.
Really?
Wow. Yeah, and in Dixie Alley too, the wind shear values are so extreme that those storms can be just little showers and then just pop up and have an F4 or F5 on the ground in a matter of minutes, which must make it even more difficult. And I remember chasing on April 27, 2011, we were chasing a storm that had very low reflectivity. It was just had developed, and then it was a Philadelphia tornado.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned Dr. Ted Fujita, and he theorized that tornadoes could get strong enough to dig a trench in the ground. And I know that tornado got an EF5 rating. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but because it dug a trench in the ground that was 2 feet deep, 50 yards wide, and 500 yards long. And that's the first that I've ever heard of that. And you have that thick red or Alabama clay down there. And, the conditions were just so perfect over such a large geographical area. I remember feeling almost a helpless feeling, like, where do you target? You know there's going to be deadly tornadoes, but you don't know exactly where those tracks are going to be. And there were so many storms. I was overwhelmed as a storm chaser, driving in circles back and forth. And so how do you cover so many storms and keep everything so organized? Is it just your years of experience, or do you have a staff that's working and notifying you of different storms that are firing? Because, we had trouble keeping up with it, and we were watching it nonstop on the radar.
Yeah. Take us through a day, James, when you have like a severe weather outbreak, what goes on in, the behind-the-scenes stuff?
April 27th of 2011, that was kind of an anomaly. That was, for us, that's about an outbreak we see every 40 years. We had one like that, my senior year, the one I talked about in 1974, and prior to that, we had one March 21st, 1932.
And how do you compare all those?
I'm sorry?
How do you compare all those different super outbreaks from your perspective, experiencing those three?
The large-scale synoptics are not that different, really. They're pretty similar. What makes them different, it's the mesoscale stuff. And of course, in 1932, there's we don't have a lot of data on that. But the one thing I noticed, in the 2011 outbreak with those low LCL heights, that makes a big difference here. It's a huge difference. And we kind of keep an eye on that. And of course, the lowest level, surface to 925 millibars, that shear was just off the scale.
It was like 5 knots at the surface and 50 knots.
Almost hurricane force just above the ground.
And one of the things I learned a long time ago, when you start to see these horizontal vortices and these tornadoes, like we had in almost all of those things, and the shear is just unbelievable. But back to your question on how to handle multiple violent tornadoes, I don't know if I have a good answer for that. And I'll be honest with you guys, I don't know if that was my best work. I don't think it was. I don't choose to look at April 27th as a success. And I know there were many success stories, but the only thing I'm focused on, it's the number 252, because that's how many people died. Yeah. And these were precious people. Life is precious. We often forget that, but these were moms and dads and college students and little boys, little girls, grandmoms and granddads. And I know that drives you guys. You're in it to keep people safe. And I appreciate it about you guys, and that's what you do. But on that day, I knew that at the same time, and understand, while Tuscaloosa was being hit, and that was the one that we, everybody saw the video of the tornadoes, and we had 2 more at the same time.
Yeah.
And do you discriminate against somebody just because they live in a rural area?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I don't know if what we did was right or wrong. So what we've done, we're working with social scientists, behavioral experts to help us get better. I thought the death toll that day should have been 30 or less. The lead time was 30 to 45 minutes on almost every tornado. People had a place to go in most cases. In about 30 cases, it was just their day. They had nowhere to go. But we've got to get better. And I don't know if what I did was right, but we just try and bounce from storm to storm. But it's so easy to get sucked into one where you've got a live, tower cam looking at it, and it's this incredible video. And I wonder if I didn't do some people right by focusing on tornadoes for too long on that day. But, it's something we're going to sort through. But from my
perspective,
learned this, guys, humility is missing in this science.
Yeah.
There's a lot we don't know, and there's a lot we can't do. And I don't think I did a good job that day. So we're going to go in, and the energy I've got left for the rest of my career, we're going to focus on getting better.
Well, you've got a lot of energy. I mean, that's for sure. I mean, I've heard your work schedule.
I'm cranky. I'm telling you guys, and you probably know this about me. I moved to Tuscaloosa when I was in 5th grade after a time in my life where my father abandoned me and my mom. I'm a fatherless child. He walked away. My father never said goodbye. Have a nice life. See you later. It was hard. We were broke. We moved there. And Tuscaloosa is a very special place for me. And because there were people there that loved us and encouraged us and really made a difference in my life. And 53 people died in that deal. And I feel like it was a failure to my own city in that case. So we're going to go back and figure out what's going on here.
Yeah,
and
you can't force
people.
people. You can't force people to take cover, though. I mean, you can give them all the warning. You can show them the live video, and you can't physically make somebody take cover.
Right.
And I've watched your coverage.
There's some people that will not take responsibility over anything.
Exactly.
They just won't do anything. But in some cases, we know that people thought they were supposed to hear a siren, which is nuts. I mean, here we are in 2013, and people think their first way of getting a tornado warning is some stinking outdoor warning siren 5 miles away, which is World War I technology. And we know a lot of people died because of this stupid siren mentality.
Yeah.
And that has got to stop. And I know they serve a purpose. They reach a limited number of people outdoors. I know that. But we've got to communicate with people that they don't work. That's not your first line of getting the warnings. And the other thing I think was a problem, too, was so many false alarms.
Yeah, exactly.
FAR is not good. But having said that, the Weather Service in Birmingham has done a remarkable job. They've dropped that FAR from about 80% down to about 40%. They've cut it in half. So we're getting there. And we are working hard, and we're going to get better.
Well, I was watching your coverage, and I feel the opposite. I think that, I know that you have high standards, but and watching that in the tower cam, it looked like an F5, like from May 3rd, 99 in the plains. I mean, so powerful, and it looked like one of the most powerful tornadoes I've ever seen, and it's impacting people friends and family, and you maintain your cool, and your voice has this calm intensity to it that you're like, this community, take cover now, this community, take cover now, and to organize all that. I mean, you're delivering the information, and on the people's side, I think maybe one positive that can come from that is that you always need to assume the worst case scenario when tornado warnings are issued. If it takes an extra, 20 minutes of preparation, or even dig a hole in the ground right next to your house, and even that would be safer, than being in some of the mobile homes and non-well-built homes. I know here in Oklahoma, I feel like our house is built out of cardboard. When there's a northerly wind, it feels like I'm in a hurricane eye wall. And, I have the Dominator parked in the driveway, and I'd just go out there and drop it down if a tornado came. But, I think that, with social media, too, I know you're a pioneer in terms of broadcast meteorologists and anybody, and delivering warnings through social networking and Twitter and Facebook. And I'm sure lots of people are reading your tweets, especially the younger generations. And there's got to be a way to fix the system and just have your phone deliver an alarm when tornado warnings are issued. And everybody needs a shelter and a plan, a safety plan for sure.
James, you're familiar with the Greensburg tornado, right? Back in 2007.
Yes.
That's kind of like how the '74 outbreak kind of changed your life. That tornado changed my life. We were the first ones in the town, and
Oh goodness, I cannot imagine that.
yeah, I can't. It still seems like a dream. But there was a guy there that was one of the 12 people that I believe that died that just refused to take cover. I mean, he knew the tornado was coming, and he said, "Oh, to the heck with it." And you can't force somebody to take cover. So I mean, for you to blame yourself for all those people that died.
Well, here's the one thing we've got to do. We all have to do better. We're not reaching certain people groups very well. We all know we're reaching the weather weenies. I mean, we got weather weenies watching this show. I mean, look, they're in. They're going to know what's going on, and they're going to be safe. We're reaching typically people that have pretty good income, that have the fancy phones, and they're getting their warnings on a smartphone app or something. We're reaching younger people through social media, the Twitter. A lot of younger kids latch in that way, and they watch these live streams. But we're not doing very well with lower income families. We're not doing that good with Hispanic families. And we've got to get better at that.
What can we do? What do you recommend that we do?
Well, here's the Hispanic thing. That's a challenge. I mean, what we're going to have to do is work with Spanish radio does a pretty good job of reaching that demographic, and we've got to establish relationships with Hispanic radio stations. I don't know what they're doing weather-wise. I don't think they're doing wall-to-wall severe weather, but we've got to have Spanish radio taking what we're saying and translating that on the radio. And radio is a big deal. The other thing about April 27th, we had a big event that morning.
Yeah, I remember the Huntsville. Did it hit Huntsville, Alabama?
It hit a bunch of cities, right, from Huntsville down to Cullman and Tuscaloosa. And 5 people were killed that morning between 5 and 8 a.m. And let me just say this, that was not forecast. I didn't forecast it.
I didn't see it coming.
Traditional numerical weather prediction techniques failed. The models didn't pick it up. We've got to figure out what went wrong. Now, the warnings were good, but 12 hours in advance, we didn't know. But we had 250,000 people with no power after that. And so that hampered our ability to reach them with commercial television. And so we really were more like radio announcers, because I would say probably half the audience that day were listening instead of watching. And that's another thing I had to think of was these people can't see what I'm seeing. But all this stuff we're going to take into account, and we're going to get better. Lower income families, that's a challenge. We've got to get weather radios in their hands.
That's what I think.
We've got to do a better job. And for a lot of these people, they can't afford a $30 weather radio. And for some people watching this show, they cannot imagine that. But a lot of families are struggling. And we've got to get in their hands some type of device that's basically a giveaway that will alarm them, on a county-by-county basis.
Well, with our social networking following combined, we should do some charities and try to get those things into people's hands. And we had the Yazoo City tornado experience back in 2010, and I hadn't seen damage in years of storm chasing. And we were following this 2-mile-wide tornado. It was rain-wrapped, and we came into Yazoo City, and we couldn't see any of the damage. So we thought, thankfully, it missed the town. But then we got to the east side of the town, and that's where a lot of mobile homes are located, and it was devastated. The trees were down, and we were there before emergency personnel, and I remember pulling people out house to house, and people with injuries that you can't imagine, and they'd look into your eyes, and they needed help, like they're looking to us for help, but it's such a helpless feeling because I didn't have the training to treat a lot of those injuries. And we found a man named Lee Woods who had a severe broken back injury. And thankfully we had our Discovery medic with us and brought a stretcher and carried him out. And he was airlifted to Jackson, Mississippi Hospital. And we still keep in touch today. But he had my cell phone number. I gave it to him. And every single time he'd hear a clap of thunder or a thunderstorm would come because of post-traumatic stress, he'd call my phone, and it passed around in all Yazoo City. So anytime there was a storm coming to Yazoo City, my phone would blow up. And I can't, just feeling that pressure of making the wrong call or telling them something. I mean, that's the pressure that you feel every day. And so what we did is we got the community tornado shelter down there, and we heard the other day that 16 of the people from Yazoo City were in there taking shelter. And it would just, if charity organizations would unite, we could probably have tornado shelters for all these people within range if they can get the warning. And I think that's also another pioneering type of research you're doing with the interdisciplinary science between meteorology and the social sciences, and seeing why people aren't taking cover. And it probably has a lot to do with the testosterone, like the guy's like, you guys take cover. And then the guy likes to protect the home, and go out and stand in front there and watch the storm come. And I think that happens a lot. But people need to realize that Mother Nature is nothing to mess with. And I don't care, if you're Hulk Hogan or Macho Man Randy Savage, if you're standing in front of an F4 or F5 tornado, you're like
F2,
an ant. You're like an
F2
ant
tornado.
next to it. F2, F1, F0, anything.
Hey, let me ask you. I know you're supposed to be asking me questions, but I have thought about this. We every year we do this big spotter training. The way we do it once a year, and it's big. There's like over 500 that show up at a big venue here. Mm-hmm. I have considered bringing in some type of paramedic to come in and teach, just not to train them to be a paramedic, but to give them basic information on what do you do if you come in and you're out there and all of a sudden you got somebody that's injured and they're dying of pain. You can tell they got a broken back. Does that make any sense, or do you think that's too dangerous?
No, I think that makes sense. And one thing we were thinking about doing is doing basically doing shows kind of around the country where you talk about what you should do when a tornado is coming, the safety procedures, and do storm spotter training, and then also have storm chasers go through first responder training. And somebody we were partnering with, Sean Schofer, up in Canada, as a trained first responder, and we're building a Dominator 3 this year. And instead of just being tailored for research, we're making Dominator 3 a first responder vehicle with all kinds of medical equipment, like Jaws of Life, like things to pull out vehicles. And so we made that vehicle kind of the dual approach. But I think that, going around the country and doing those, instead of just Skywarn training courses, but also make storm chasers as first responders as well. But in addition, train people how to have an action plan so when tornado warnings are issued. And I think after April 27th, people need to realize to always assume the worst case scenario, because just the 15 minutes can make the difference between a loss of life and surviving.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is liability too. I mean, there's so many issues to think about for what you guys do in the field. I mean, I've got it. You guys have the hard job. I mean, I'm in a nice warm studio where it doesn't rain in here. I mean,
Our job's, it's easy. The only thing that's difficult is the gas station food every day. But I think that the preservatives might be keeping us young somehow.
You guys better be careful. Your hair might fall out and you might look like me one day. So
well, my forehead's been getting bigger and bigger every year, and I've got a big cranium already. So.
Oh boy.
But but another thing I wanted to talk about, you mentioned earlier that low-level shear, and I think this also shows your knowledge of the science. And a lot of people, are obsessed with deep layer shear and cape or instability. But one of my interests and obsessions is that you don't really need a lot of cape, especially in Dixie Alley. You can have 200 or 300 cape, which normal severe weather parameters wouldn't indicate a potential for a tornado. But wind shear makes its own updraft, and especially that low-level wind shear, and it really tightens the mesocyclone, and that's why you can get those tiny little storms. And I remember April 15, 2011, we saw the Jackson tornado at 10:45 in the morning, followed that first wave all the way to the Alabama border, and then dropped south to Leakesville, Mississippi, like 50 miles north of the Gulf of Mexico. And we're going through this national forest with mud roads, and we come out, and the storm it was at 40 dBz, which is low radar reflectivity, but it was perfectly shaped, tiny little bean. And then we come up over this hill, and there's a strong tornado on the ground. And and also the relative lack of spotters and storm chasers out in your area. I mean, you don't have as many firsthand reports and as reports coming in, because we have so many chasers out here in Tornado Alley. So your radar skills have to be incredible. I mean, you have to be more proactive too.
It is hard, and a lot of our stuff in the cold season, it's low topped.
Yeah,
and understand, we could use a few more radar sites here. I mean, I'll find you a few places where the closest radar is over 125 miles away, and
they go over the top.
The beam goes right over it. You don't know it's there. But out of all of the parameters I look at, we all look at all this stuff, but one of my favorites in the cold season, it's the bulk shear between the surface and 925 millibars.
Us too. Wow.
I'm just saying that there's a lot of things you can look at, but that's very important for me. And and what you said is crucial. Everybody needs to understand this. You don't have to have these screaming cape values of 3,000 or higher here. We have had a pretty rough tornado outbreak with surface-based capes of around 250.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You look at the most unstable cape, and that might be a little bit higher, but that can be so deceiving. In almost every cold season event here, it's high shear, low cape.
Exactly.
And they can be very problematic. They're low top, a lot of times hardly any thunder and lightning, but you can have a, pretty significant tornado drop out of these things. And they happen a lot of times late at night, and they're very problematic. So, that's something that I'm telling you guys, April 27th, come on, that was easy.
Major anomaly, yeah.
It was easy. Anybody, I could bring in a third grader and work the warning desk, and they'd be pretty good at that.
Oh, I don't know about
what
that.
really proves your worth is how you handle these middle of the night events, like January 23rd a year ago, when you got the low cape, high shear, middle of the night, big rain mass, everything's embedded. I mean, it is tough. I don't have you guys out there, and I'm relying on the public. And I'll say this, social media is wonderful in that not only is it a way of disseminating information, it's a way of pulling information back. Are they all trained spotters? Of course not. Most of them aren't. But yet I can find people in very rural areas now that I could never find before. So while they're not trained, at least they can give you an idea of what's happening. So
exactly.
Yeah, we have some really difficult situations to deal with here.
And it was crazy because you have the front way to the west in Texas, like this Christmas Day outbreak recently.
Yeah, we got no dry lines here.
Yeah, you used to have those prefrontal confluence.
Yeah, and they kept bouncing further and further east. I mean, there were tornado warnings in Beaumont, Texas, and then these feeder bands would fire up out ahead of the line. And there's warnings in the Florida Panhandle. There's warnings way up in Georgia.
They can go anywhere.
They go north of the warm front. There was that one that, because a lot of people think here, once a storm crosses into the stable air well north of the warm front, that its tornado threat is over. But on that day, I mean, they would just keep going because, I mean, the first of all, the cold air is so shallow, but I mean, there's dynamic piping and all kinds of low-topped supercells. And James, you said you also deal with tropical weather there. Do you have any notable stories about hurricanes that made landfall with tornado outbreaks? And
my first week here on television in this market was September 10th of 1979. And of all weeks, we had a major hurricane on the Gulf Coast that week, a storm called Hurricane Frederick. And they sent me down there, and that was wild. I mean, I love hurricanes. In fact, I used to go to all the hurricanes. I really don't anymore. And I don't know why. It's just like there's like 10 million TV people and all these blow-dried guys trying to make the, one of these days a piece of sheet metal is going to come fly and cut off one of these blow-dried boobs' head. and you're not going to see all those news because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
These are like journalists that have no business being out there. So I don't even like to go anymore. But we've had some pretty interesting tornado setups here with tropical systems. And but again, you talk about challenging. They're low top. Now, this is in the summer where typically you get these 40 and 50 and 60,000 foot storms. These feeder bands are low top, these warm core systems, and you can have these little spinners that come up in the spiral bands and trying to warn for those things. It is like playing whack-a-mole.
I know.
You see the issue?
In recent memory, the big ones that produced some pretty significant flooding and tornadoes up here were Hurricane Ivan in 2004, and the next year was Katrina. And typically for us, if they come in down there anywhere from about Morgan City over to Mobile Bay, we wound up in that favorable quadrant for those things.
The northeast quadrant. Right?
It is a challenge.
Yeah, because we were chasing Hurricane Isaac, and there was a wedge tornado just 3 miles to our east, and it was that one that came in coastal Mississippi, and we chased the storm in a parking garage in Waveland, Mississippi, and we pre-planned it, and we were 3 floors up, and we were surrounded by the storm surge, and we had plenty of Vienna sausages and Slim Fast shakes to live there for a month if we had to, but we were sleeping in our cars, and it was a very sturdy parking garage. But interestingly, all the animals from around congregated at that parking garage. There's wild boar there were snakes, I mean, you name it, everything. But we had those feeder bands with those spin-ups that were just going right over our parking garage. And you could hear on the other side the winds ramp up to like 130 miles an hour. There was one time we were outside looking east, and we saw power flashes that illuminated what appeared to be a funnel. And we called it into the weather service. And by the time we got through, it was already gone. Yeah. And they spin up and they're already gone again. So, the tropical weather you deal with. And now there's ice potentially to your north, right?
That too. But I was going to mention one more hurricane that was an anomaly. And I was actually in Dallas, Texas when this happened. For a few years, I was transferred away from here. I was at Channel 4 in Dallas as the weeknight weather guy in the mid-'80s.
Really?
But while I was away, there was a hurricane that came up that wasn't really a big hurricane. It was called Hurricane Danny. That brought more tornadoes than I think any other tornado in my career here. And that's an example. You don't have to have a big hurricane for those things to form. And I remember during Hurricane Andrew's second landfall, there was a big tornado in Laplace, Louisiana. So occasionally they do get pretty sizable. But yeah, tropical, that's one deal. But like I say, ice is a whole nother deal. So tonight I'm worried about freezing rain. And here's our problem here. You guys get some of this, but you get a lot of snow out there. Where we are, typically Arctic air outbreaks are shallow. And sometimes you're like 1,000, 2,000 feet deep, and that's it. And, you go up on top of that cold layer, and it's like 45 degrees up there. Yeah. So it just starts raining. And at the surface, it can be 28 or 29 or 30 degrees. And that freezing rain can be really messy here. Now, this thing tomorrow morning is going to be kind of marginal, but yet it can coat these bridges, and we got schools opening late, and it's kind of a hassle north and east of Birmingham. But I'll say this, out of all the different kinds of weather where I think we're statistically overdue here, it's a big, bad, nasty, crippling ice storm. The last really bad one here was in 1982. We had been down to about zero, and warm air came up on top of the cold air. We had overrunning, and it started raining. It was 25, and it just poured rain. And within 30 minutes, this place was on ice. So that is nasty.
Really?
We had power outages for 3 weeks after that kind of thing. It is devastating. So
yeah, and ice storms here in Oklahoma. Ice storms here in Oklahoma are more rare than there because you get those cold air outbreaks. You're so close to the Gulf that you just get that tropical moisture up and over. But we did have one. Was it 2002 here in Oklahoma? And there was thunder and lightning, basically thunderstorms moving up and over the shallow cold layer. And it wasn't freezing on the roads because it was 70 degrees the day before, and then the cold Arctic air mass came down. But we had 2-3 inches of ice that coated all the trees. And I was just covering the storm, and in my house, and you could hear the trees snapping like shotgun blasts. And I heard this tree go down right near the house, and it hit the house. Our whole house shook back and forth. We had a rental house. And then I heard a tree go down in the back, and you could hear the power lines get pulled out of the house. And I just knew, we're going to be in survival mode for a little while. But it was 2 weeks before we got our power back, and like the trees that went down, it was crazy.
Yeah, we had some
and here's the thing. Most people, when that starts, they think we're idiots. Immediately, when people think of winter storm, they think it's got to snow. And so what happens, they look outside and it's raining, and those weather guys are boneheads. They said, we got a winter storm, it's just raining. I'm not going to worry about it. They don't know it's like 27 degrees and it's pouring rain. Yeah. And this is a disaster that's starting. And before you know it, they're trapped. They can't leave. They've got no food. The power goes out. And during that 82 thing, some of the things I remember, we had a broadcast tower that collapsed. From the weight of the ice, and you guys have probably had that somewhere in the Plain States, but we had one on a mountain here, Cheahaw Mountain, that came down. And while our tower did not come down where I worked at the time, we had these huge blocks of ice coming off that thing. I mean, it was like, somebody could have been killed. So we had to park 3 miles away, and they brought us in with these vans with reinforced steel roofs to go to work.
That's another reason to wear a helmet, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. Helmets during ice storms. We're around towers.
Just wear a helmet. I should just wear a helmet all the time, personally.
It'd be a good look for you.
Find one big enough. But, wow.
So how does your wife feel about what you do, James?
We're still married after 31 years, so I guess she tolerates it. We were married in 1981, and this is a hard job, fellas. You know this. A lot of people think, television weatherman are idiots, and if you watch the movies, every television weather guy's a moron.
Yeah.
Like Brick Tamlin, on Anchorman.
I've been called Brick a few times for those our podcast or the weathercast that we do.
I've got a sign in here that says "I love lamp." But the truth, this is hard because we work nights. The core part of this job, it's working nights, and I have 2 children. Now, one's grown. One's 28, and he's out of the house. But the other one's 15. They're 13 years apart, which is weird, but that's just the way it worked. But this, the 15-year-old, he plays baseball for a local high school, and I'm not home that much, and that is hard. Yeah. And now, instead of worrying about being on television, I'm telling you guys, television is the least time-consuming thing I do. I mean, I stand in front of a green wall for 3 minutes and tell a weather story. At 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 10 o'clock. Most of my time is spent doing weather on radio, on the internet, producing videos and doing shows like this. We do a show called Weather Brains every Monday night.
How's that going for you?
It's very, very good
It's
show.
awesome.
Yeah.
We've been doing that show for 7 years. We thought nobody would ever listen to it. We didn't really cared if anybody listened to it, but it's kind of reached critical mass. I mean, we've got some cool people. We got Kevin Selly in Dallas, and Nate Johnson in Raleigh, and Bill Murray and JB, and it's a fun show. But that's part of the stuff we do. And I don't get home until midnight, and I get up every morning before 5. And when I was your age, when I was you guys' age, it was all right. But I'm like some old crank now, and it's hard when you're this old. By Friday night, I mean, I'm out there on TV at 10 o'clock. My mouth is moving. My brain is shut down. And I still speak in schools every day. And I really see a lot of younger TV weather guys that don't do that.
Do you drink a lot of caffeine? How do you do it?
Yes, I have some right here with me now.
So we drink the sippy cups. We drink the 32-ounce ones that you get at 7-Eleven.
There you go.
High fructose corn syrup.
I take little cat naps. Yeah. But I think the speaking in school things is very important because there were some people that encouraged me about getting excited about science. I look back at those people like Doswell and Moeller and J.B. Elliott and these men that affected me so much. The least I can do is go get somebody else excited about it. And I like speaking to the younger kids. I like first, second, third, fourth, fifth graders. So I'm in a school every single day unless I've got to do something work-related. And then the other thing that you're doing all day, it's social media. And we talk a lot about that, but it's something that is time-consuming. You can't shorten the amount of time it takes to answer questions and respond to people. So you're dealing with Twitter and Google Plus and Facebook and all these other things. So
there's Pinterest and MySpace.
It's a long day, but my wife, back to your original question, she's just been an absolute incredibly lady that supported me and loved me through the good, the bad, the ugly, and all these bad hours. So
well, you're a lucky guy because I know it's difficult sometimes to find a relationship for us being on the road 50, 80,000 miles a year. We don't smell too good at the end of the day either.
No, in fact, I don't smell so good right now.
Me neither.
If you're going to do what I do, you've got to be willing to make the sacrifice to work these long hours. You cannot be a pretty boy that goes on television with a nice hairstyle and a pocket square and be on television 3 minutes at a time and go home and do nothing all day. Yeah. If you do that, you will fail because that business is dead. The traditional television business model is dying. And if you cannot help carve out this new model through all these new platforms, you have no hope in this business. And I see a lot of people that are not willing to work hard.
And with storm chasing, too, a lot of people saw our show on Discovery, and they think there's all this money in it. But I'll tell you, I had a 1985 Reliant, a 1991 Topaz, living tornado to tornado, and it's not like that. You've got to have the passion for meteorology, and now a lot of people are just wanting to get on television.
Yeah,
if you want to make money and be on television, storm chasing and weather, it's a lot of work. I mean, I have no personal life, honestly. I mean, I sit there in social network warnings. I'm watching weather. We're driving all over the country, but we choose to because it's our passion. And but also, I think like your talks at the school too. I mean, people look up to you in your area. And I do speaking engagements as well for Discovery Education. And I think that you also make science cool. And when I was growing up, I was a late bloomer, had huge glasses. I wore a shirt with a lightning bolt on it, never had the cool clothes.
Got any pictures we can see?
Have you ever seen the movie Lucas in the 1980s?
Yeah.
That's Reed Timmer right there.
I was obsessed with catching insects. Like, I got in trouble in class for studying, because I was in Science Olympiad. So I got in trouble in class for studying for the tree identification event. And it's kind of funny because it was in a social studies class, but now it's so important. But I was a major nerd. I weighed I didn't probably grow into an adult until about 25, physiologically. But I was a nerd, and I'd go through the whole day of school without talking. But toward the end, I'd say, "Oh, there's this big lake effect snowstorm coming," because I lived in Michigan, and no one would listen to me. Just said I was a nerd. But it seems like science is kind of becoming cool now, which is good because we need more scientists. Meteorology is a collaborative effort, and like movies like Iron Man, for example, all these movies, it's like the nerd is kind of the hero now. And I think, James, you're obviously looked up to there. And when you're talking to those kids, you have no idea probably how many meteorologists you're creating and how many self-esteems you're boosting and keeping people pursuing the sciences.
Well, people did that for me. And again, the least I can do is do it for somebody else. And I tell these kids, listen, there's a lot we don't know. We need your help. You need to come in here and figure out a lot of these things that we can't do. Here's a classic example. I'm still waiting on some Einstein in the science to figure this out. Summer convection. Okay?
Yeah,
Where we are,
storms.
we have air mass storms every day, June, July, August. I cannot tell you at 7 o'clock in the morning when and where it's going to rain at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that is frustrating. So the forecast you hear on the radio, hot and humid today with scattered mostly afternoon and evening showers and storms. What good does that do anybody? They're trying to plan a birthday party at 3 o'clock in a certain neighborhood. So, that's a big convection.
Yeah.
And the
lightning.
other issue are
Lightning's
the
a big
winter
issue,
storms
though.
and severe convection. There's just so much to learn. So I'm really hoping that this next generation will take the technology they have and the possibilities they have and really take all this to a new level. And I was at the AMS convention a couple of weeks ago, the annual meeting in Austin.
Yeah, and congratulations on your award too, by the way.
Congratulations.
Again, the second one, but I know you're humble.
I looked out over these brilliant men and women in that room, and they were from all over the world. And as smart as everybody in that room happened to be, I'm thinking, how much is it we don't know?
Yeah.
And we beat our chest, and we just think we know so much. There's a lot of things we don't know. So I want this next generation to get plugged in and get excited. And one of the things I've learned, I do think that there's going to be a lot of brilliant scientists that come out of the 2011 tornado outbreak. So a lot of kids that lived in Joplin, Missouri.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of kids that lived in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. You go back farther, Greensburg and those kind of things. Moore, Oklahoma in 1999. Those are the ones that are going to have a real passion to take this to the next level.
Exactly. So, James, you probably don't have a whole lot of time to storm chase, but how many tornadoes have you seen actually in person? How many storm
One.
chase? Really?
One.
Probably, how many by tower? By the tower?
You talk about tornado envy here, okay? I mean, this is bad. you guys have seen like 10,000. I've seen one.
Which one was that?
I was in college, and I was out with my ham radio gear, and it was between Tuscaloosa and Brent, Alabama on US 82. I was in the right place at the right time. Classic look, wall cloud, tornado, had an RFD. I mean, it was classic. And it was moving away from me, so I was perfectly safe. It was in a very rural area, and it lifted about 5 minutes later. And that's it. And, of course, the problem is I am paid good money to be standing in front of that green wall when there's a tornado around here.
Yeah.
So as long as I've been doing this since 1979, it's really 78 was when I started doing television weather. So that's taken me off the street for a long time.
Oh, exactly.
Well, imagine, though, how many people wouldn't get the word. I mean, if you're not behind the screen covering a severe weather event, I mean, you say that a lot of weather people are treated like brick, but you, I mean, I've been in tornado in Dixie Alley, and people look at you as a hero. I mean, they really do. So you're doing something differently, or at least the people are. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Would you ever consider going with us?
Oh, I'd give my right arm to go with you guys. You kidding? I'd watch that show. I'd TiVo that thing. I'd sit back and think, man, what would I give just to ride with these guys one time?
It would be an honor.
And you're probably thinking, man, that reads a spaz.
No, well, I'm a spaz. I mean, we're all the same. We are all weather weenies here. All right.
It would be an honor if you would.
It'd be an honor if you were in the Dominator, and if you wore your suspenders, we'll all wear suspenders in honor of that too.
You don't know how that would be the thrill of a lifetime. But I think what I need to do is figure out maybe where I can take a week in June. I think what's going to happen, our youngest son, when he graduates from high school, that's going to free me up.
Yeah.
I really devote a lot of time to my family. And he plays baseball, and I go to all of his baseball games. They play, these showcases and tournaments in the summer and all that. But when he's graduated from high school, he's in the 10th grade. He's a sophomore. But what I want to do is maybe see if I can just go one time with you guys in June, which is a great month for us. The way it works for us here, our tornado season in spring is March, April, May. By June, we're in the air mass thunderstorm thing, We rarely ever have classic severe weather, and the tropical season's not cranked up really. So June is a great month for a vacation week to go out there and do that, because you guys said that's a great week for you guys out there in the Plain States. So maybe in 3 or 4 years,
anytime.
We'll get the air conditioning fixed in the Dominator by then too, because. But yeah, it's brutal.
You guys do your own mechanical work on that thing?
Well, I grew up doing the golf course business. So in the summers, I'd mow grass in the fairways. And our mechanic at the golf course, Kevin Barton and Ben Christie, we had them as guests last week. They built race cars for the dirt tracks in Michigan. And so we approached them with a concept. And, he quit his job and then started building Dominators for us. And we had a lot of trust in him and kind of came with this general concept. And he said he just woke up in the middle of the night and had it and built it in like 3 months. And so they're great vehicles. I trust them inside most tornadoes, but of course there are those tornadoes that we won't get close to. I mean, that Philadelphia, Mississippi one, it sounded like continuous thunder when it was approaching, the roar of the tornado, and something like that you could just tell go the other way. Yeah. But I mean, I think it's important too that people that watch the show and see what we're doing. Don't try it at home. Whatever you do, do not do it. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you that I'm getting more and more scared because that first intercept, like I'm watching this rope come at us, in 2009, June 5th in Wyoming, and I was mesmerized by it. Never thought, this thing could lift the Dominator. I mean, we spent so much time getting in its path, but when that first wind gust hit the vehicle, and this was just a rope, small, relatively weak, we measured 155-mile-an-hour wind gusts in there, but it felt like a freight train hitting the vehicle. I'll never feel that feeling, and your ears pop, and the whole vehicle shaking, and they're scary. And whether you're in an armored vehicle or anything, I mean, I'd rather be, just watching the tornado from afar, calling in the report, or maybe up close, a little closer, obviously, but streaming video and helping out in that respect. And with the radars that we have, too, we don't have to be inside to measure the velocities. But James, I had one question for you too. What do you think about those suction vortices? I know there was a lot on the Tuscaloosa tornado, but I've seen tornadoes that have 200-mile-per-hour winds with miniature tornadoes or suction vortices going around a circle, the multiple vortex ones. And there are some theories that show that the wind speeds could even be 500 or 600 miles per hour, right near the ground in those suction vortices, and that's why I get one house.
I'll be honest with you. You've kind of led the research on those things. I have watched you talk about those for years. I honestly believe that the Tuscaloosa tornado had those suction vortices involved in where I really think we need to look at the damage in Tuscaloosa was just northeast of the city. Mm-hmm. Everybody was focused on the middle of town, which is what people do. And I do agree it was an EF4. But if you go northeast of the city in a very rural area, a little community called Peterson, near Brookwood. And what happens, I take the back roads to go to the University of Alabama football games. I do weather support for them. And so I'm there every home game. And, you guys know that Alabama football is huge. There's like 100 and something thousand people, and the traffic is horrible. Mm-hmm. I know this state better than anybody else. If you want to come to an Alabama football game, you come with me. I'll get you there in a heartbeat. But
that'd be awesome.
I take those back roads. In fact, you guys ought to come on I do the weather on the big, Jumbotron screens.
Yeah.
You guys need to come one time, and we'll do it together. That'll be a hoot.
Yeah, we'll bring the Dominators are crimson, but OU colors. But I mean, it works for Alabama too. So we'll bring the Dominator out there.
One fall day in 2011, I was taking the back roads. These are literally dirt roads, and I saw what I believe damage would be clearly consistent with an EF5, and I think it had something to do with the suction vortices thing. The wind speed had to be over 200 miles an hour. The steel beams that were taken down, the way it looked, and I don't think anybody had looked at this. Mm-hmm. And I would love, for some of the Weather Service guys, Tim Marshall. You guys know Tim?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good guy.
Tim knows more about storm surveys than any other human. I would love for him to come look at what I saw, and a lot of that's still there, but I think it was related to suction vortices.
I bet it was, and the changing friction, because as it was going through the city, there weren't as many trees, and then as it moves out of the city, the frictional properties of the earth change, and so maybe you had suction vortices that developed northeast of there, and I think that the wind speeds get to 500 or 600 miles an hour, and they'll spin up in a few seconds, and then they hit a certain point in the atmosphere, and then they'll dissipate. And Dr. Fiedler here at the University of Oklahoma did computer simulations of those and showed that they have a kink just above the ground with the strongest wind speeds right near the ground because friction forces the wind in toward the vortex, and it stretches, and they're real short-lived. And our goal is to try to get a radar up close and try to measure those because the Doppler on, the Doppler mobile Doppler radars have to be further back and scan higher up. But what's really the mystery is what happens near the ground and the interaction with friction. So I bet that was a suction vortex out there, and who knows how strong the wind speeds really get. The upward velocities too. So
and that's an example of the research that needs to be done that will help all of us. for these things. And I need to go down there and spend half a day and take some photographs. Yeah, I saw it from the air. You know, and the way it works with our helicopter, we don't fly during severe weather like they do in Oklahoma City. We had a situation where a pilot almost got in trouble a few years back, and he didn't like flying it, and we just don't fly anymore. Our storms are different. They're HP. It's raining everywhere. The visibility is horrible. But we get that thing up as soon as we can, and he flew the damage path, and something went on up there, and I think it's related to that. But again, that's a classic example of the research that needs to be done to help us in years to come, that filters down to help us on the operational side.
Well, any time that we're available, and that's, often, I mean, we'll be out there chasing in your area if we can make it out there, the Dominator streaming live video, and we'll try to help out the best we can with providing ground truth. But Christmas Day,
look, you guys really helped on April 27th. I don't know if you know this or not.
Yeah, I remember working, with this.
But you guys reporting in Mississippi, the help was beyond belief. Because you guys know what you're doing, you know what you're seeing, it's a good report, and that was tremendous. So, again, that helps all of us in the operational side, sharing information like that.
And everybody working together is so important. And that's one thing I thought going into academia, that it'd be this positive environment where everybody works together and learns. But then you do a thesis defense or something, and it seems like people will ask questions to try to make you look bad, to make them look better. And there are all these egos that are still there that I think needs to be eliminated. And almost, I think in the private sector, you don't have that as much, and you can do kind of the fringe research that advances it. But I'd love to just see everybody work together, the social sciences, the meteorology, the academic community, across the board. And
we have to focus on the issues that unite us. Anybody in any science can look at the things that tear us apart. And there's some hard issues we have to address. I fully understand that. But I'll tell you guys this. I am fully focused on making the severe weather warning process better. That's going to be what I do for the rest of my career. I'm just not involved in politics or any of this other stuff that gets people mad and upset at each other. I'm not going there. I don't have any interest in that anymore.
Yeah, you got to block out the negative, because, that only holds us back, and it's a distraction.
Exactly.
Just keep moving forward. And I could tell, you make me fired up. Just hear your voice over there. You can hear the passion. And I think you definitely
we are going to get better, and you're right. And we can't focus on these hater guys. I'm sure you guys have the haters. You probably don't have as many as I do.
I don't know.
They hate everything you do. Every time you come on TV, they hate it. They don't like the way you forecast the weather. They think you're an idiot. And I have a folder in my email program called Hate Mail. If I ever think I'm something special, all I have to do is cruise over and read some of those.
Oh, we should compare folders sometime, because I've got quite a few, but I always just try to use it as motivation. Because they're wasting all their time, focusing negatively on what somebody else is doing, and all that energy could be directed constructively. And so my mom always taught me to, not lead your life based on what other people say, and if they're negative, try to use that as motivation to do better and turn bad into good. And I think that applies to everything too. April 27 was a horrific, tragic event, but it's also something that we can learn from and improve, and hopefully, try to fix things too. Especially on trying to get people to take the warning seriously and have an action plan. That's the key. And I think we're in this transitional
and let me say
period.
this too, but constructive criticism is something I really need.
Me too.
There's a difference between haters and those that give you constructive criticism.
Exactly.
The only way I've ever gotten better, it's listening to constructive criticism, and that's good. But it's this hate stuff. You just have to ignore that. And the three characteristics I think we should all have in this science. Number one is have a passion. You guys have a passion. Look, I've been watching your show. Trust me, you got a passion. You guys are
embarrassing
in.
to watch sometimes for me, but
a little too much of a passion.
You ought to love going to work every day.
I
don't care if you're 70 years old. You ought to love coming to work every single day, and I think you guys do that. And then you need to have integrity, and that's a hard one. A lot of us fail in that area where, we all fail from time to time, but you've got to do the right thing when nobody's looking in the weather business. And then you've got to have a servant's heart, which means you're looking after the needs of others before your own needs. And if you can accomplish those three virtues, you're going to do fine. And we're going to learn a lot, and we're going to make the warning process better. And a lot of us have cut out that third part where you focus on others. I have seen so many weather people. They gather around these mahogany tables at these, conventions and conferences, and they decide what's best for them.
Exactly.
We're not here for us. We're here for the people. We're serving.
It's about the weather, not the people.
If I only had, I have some stories for another time. But,
I know. You know, we could all share stories about these,
but they're not, it's
boneheads.
not worth it.
But
but constructive criticism
on the end user, and we did a town hall meeting here. We had the National Weather Association annual meeting in my market in the fall of 2011, which just happened to be after the generational tornado outbreak, April 27th. We had I thought it was a really good town hall meeting. Instead of, weather people, we brought in real people, joke public.
Yes.
Now, true, a lot of them are weather weenies. It's always harder to get lower income families and the Hispanics and certain people groups there. But I thought that was a great evening of learning what their needs are, and we need to tailor our products around their needs. And if we can do that, we'll be successful. And a lot of times we worry about ourselves, and I don't care about myself. We need to care about the people using our products.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good point because a lot of social media and a lot of those iPhone warning systems. A lot of people don't have that.
Yeah.
There's got to be a way to do it.
Gotta be.
But yeah, I think the social sciences and that interdisciplinary research, between weather, severe weather, the social sciences, and everybody working together is key.
And here's the other thing, too. And I think the social science folks, and Dr. Laura Myers is who we're working with here. Dr. Myers is at Mississippi State and in Alabama. She's in the faculty of both. But she's done not only work with the public, but she's brought in the weather enterprise and those involved in the warning system. They're called Integrated Warning Team Meetings, IWT. And so you got people that work for the Weather Service. You've got people that work for emergency management. You've got broadcasters. You've got some private sector people. And we're talking among ourselves. And a lot of times we tend to be very... we're kind of in our own little world, and we don't talk to anybody else. So that's another thing we need to do. We need to get to know each other. Those that work in research, those that work in academia, those that are working for the government, those in private sector. So in addition to knowing the public, we need to know each other better too. And that's why I'm going to try and go to more of these weather conferences in years to come, just to get to know some people.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a great idea.
Maybe we'll definitely see you there. Hopefully. Yeah. I get social anxiety sometimes, but I got to get over that. So.
Now, come on. I don't believe
I'm serious.
That. So Reed Timmer says he has social anxiety.
Does.
Well, when you shoot the show, it's like our friend in the back seat with a camera. It's like another friend in the car, but I guess I just grew up a nerd, and then maybe it's an overcompensation for a while there or whatever, but...
He used to get shoved into lockers and everything back in the day,
I was just a late bloomer, but anyway, yeah.
I was a social zero. I was a social zero. I never went to a prom, never went to a high school dance. I was a loser, so I'm in there with you.
I went to the dance at the end. And I don't know if tree identification and bug collecting became cool, if it was a joke or what, but the sciences are becoming cool.
Collectors get the babes. There you go.
When I caught that Eastern Hercules beetle, though, that was when I knew it was time to retire. It's the biggest beetle.
On Weather Brains, we have show titles. You guys need to do show titles. This episode could be called, Bug Collectors Get the Babes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's funny.
James, what other hobbies do you have outside of weather? What goes on? I know you're busy with weather. It's pretty much your whole life, but you got to have some other hobbies outside of weather, right?
I don't.
I still like ham radio. A lot of people think there's no place for ham radio now with cell phones and the internet and technology, but I disagree vehemently with that statement. Let me tell you what, there's going to be a lot of days where you try and use your cell phone after April 27th. It ain't happening. Or there might be a situation where, we get some kind of catastrophe and I can communicate via HF with somebody on another continent. So ham radio is still a wonderful hobby that I enjoy. Ham radio is the reason I'm in this science, and I will always be a part of ham radio. And about the other thing I do for fun, just fun, I play tennis on Sunday nights. I've learned this, guys. If you really do this job right, you could totally get no exercise.
Yeah,
I've got to get outside and I've got to move around. So I go out and play tennis, 3-4 hours every Sunday night. I am horrible, but I hit it hard and I run a lot, and it helps. You've got to get that exercise. And I do a lot of little side jobs. One of the strange jobs I have, which doesn't pay a dime, it's a volunteer job. I am the chairman of the board of a large tertiary care hospital here.
Oh, wow. Really?
I have really got plugged into healthcare, and I don't know why. I accepted it like 7 years ago, and It's just been a good job, and it's helped me learning about healthcare. It helps me do the weather better because there's been a lot of situations out there where a lot of folks injured seriously in tornadoes have been in our hospital, and I can't share their story because of the confidentiality I've got. But I'll just say it has helped me understand people that have gone through weather tragedies much better by the access I have to them and the friendships and the relationships I've made with them. So I do that job and do children's ministry at a church, and I try and give back because these people have been pretty good to me. So I try and spend some time. But there's a hobbies, ham radio and tennis. That's it. So if you guys ever want to play tennis, come down and we'll play.
Oh, you'd work us. I play ping pong's my special. All I can do.
Ping pong.
The court's too big in tennis. I mean, we sit in the car so long. I mean, it's hard for me to work the blood clots out of my legs. I mean, I'm walking.
It's like golf, man. I don't. The only golf course I play, they have windmills on them, or pirates. I don't do golf.
We golf, and the funny story is our late friend Andy Gabrielson, who will always be missed, but we were out playing golf one day. And we're hitting it all over the place. The great thing about Oklahoma is you can hit it 3 fairways over and be fine. But suddenly, Aaron, who is my roommate, also a storm chaser, he points. He's like, "Reed, look over there." And we all look, and there's this dust devil, the most intense dust devil I've ever seen. And next thing you know, there's 3 golf carts all converging on the dust devil. And Andy and I are at the golf cart, and it went from dead calm to, no joke, a 40 or 50 mile an hour wind, like getting blasted by sand. And we have video of it on our YouTube page and everything. But yeah, it's kind of a dust devil story.
Hey, let me plug one more thing, guys, and I know we got to wrap this up here. I wrote, a lot of people are listening to this, probably they're television weather people. And I wrote a piece, I guess about a year ago, the 10 deadly sins of TV weather coverage. And I'm not saying that everything I wrote is right. It's just mainly to stimulate conversation. But I do have great fear that for a lot of people that do television weather, they're starting to commit some sins that are very that's detrimental to communicating severe weather information. And this is based on the social science research that we've done here. One of the greatest sins I'm seeing today, so many weather people are off camera now during tornado outbreaks. You don't see them. You're seeing full screen radar pictures. They're back in the back running the equipment, and that is inherently dangerous. We have learned that eye contact is crucial, and you cannot make eye contact hiding behind some equipment with a telestrator. You've got to be on the wall, and you've got to look people in the eyes. Your body language, your eye contact are a critical part of how people respond to warnings. And we have learned that. That is true. So I just wanted to encourage the television weather people. Get off that equipment and go out there and get on the green wall. And if you I understand the need to be around that equipment. I understand. But with technology today, you can take your computer over there. And if you've ever seen me on television, I got that cheap little rolling stand with a laptop on there. I can control anything from that laptop. I can control over there in the weather center.
Yeah, so, even an iPhone. You just sit there with an iPhone. And
an iPad. I mean,
iPad,
a lot of the radar we use now is coming off the iPad. Radar scope for TV. But please consider going on camera. That's one of the biggest problems I see right now during severe weather coverage. And the other thing that drives me crazy, so many of these television stations are streaming their coverage via flash. I mean, that is total boneheadedness.
Yeah, our programmer agrees with you. He's pretty
anti-flash. It shouldn't be proprietary. And for everybody likes Android and iPhone. Everybody's fighting over their favorite phones. Who cares? You've got to stream your content so that every device can access that content.
Yeah, I love
and so many times I've been trying to look for severe weather coverage, and I'll punch it up, and I'm using a device that doesn't play flash, and it says flash only. What are you doing? You're sending people away from you, and you're not giving them any information. And I see people that are streaming with silver light. You've got to stream in a universal form that can be used on any single device. And I know that might not be the weather person's fault, but the weather person can go down to the general manager's office and stir up a big stink about it. So just that's something to think about. On April 27th, we served over 70,000 concurrent live streams. Wow. We use Ustream. We use Ustream because they have the capacity where there's no problems. They can handle that much traffic, and it's universal. If you're on an Android phone, an iPhone, an iPad, a Galaxy Note, whatever you've got, it works. So just that's another problem I really see is a big problem. And I could talk about all 10, but I'm going to say one more, and I'm done. A lot of television weather people do not know their market. that you cannot cover a tornado outbreak unless you understand the people, the culture, and the geography of the market that you serve. And they're clueless. They're reading this text off these warnings. A tornado is indicated 14 miles southwest of Plant. Nobody knows where that is. Yeah. You got to tell them based on a real reference.
And that's what I read about you, is that you're known for your encyclopedia-like knowledge of all the small towns in Alabama and the microclimates too. I know maybe the Al Mohler and all the research papers you read when you were younger on small-scale meteorology. I mean, that's probably enhanced your interest in all the microclimates around your area too.
Yes,
so.
and we live in this hilly terrain where that's very important, and that's one of the benefits of going to speak with school kids every day. Instead of driving the interstates, go get off the interstate and drive a road less traveled. I love the roads less traveled. And of course, that's what you guys do for a living. But you get out there and you know where people live, and you start to understand these mesoscale weather changes that can happen. You understand places that you can use as a reference during severe weather. So get out and go talk with some school kids and drive the roads less traveled, and that will really help your knowledge when you're out there on the wall.
Wow. Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for being our guest. I mean, it's such an honor.
This has been a disaster. I've been on this show for an hour and 30 minutes. This is horrible. This is bad, man. I should apologize to you guys.
And we've got a lot of Twitter questions. So if you guys have any questions that we weren't able to address, you can follow James at Spann, Spann. You can also ask us questions at Reed Timmer TVN, and follow James's tweets during severe weather in the Southeast anywhere. I mean, they're amazing.
Also, check out Weatherbrains, weatherbrains.com, right?
Yeah, we had Reed on that show. As I recall, Reed was like in Puerto Rico or something. Remember that?
I do.
I won't get into what was going on there, but he was like having fun, so that was good.
Not as much fun. Yeah, I don't get out much, honestly, but we were waiting for a hurricane.
That was a great episode. We had more buzz about that than anyone we've had in a long time.
Yeah, no, anytime you guys need a guest or need a storm freak on there, I'd be happy to talk, especially the low-level shear. Like, we're on the same page on that, and photographs, and I'm obsessed with low-level shear compensating for CAPE, so I'd love to talk more about
we got to
that.
do a whole episode on photographs sometime. See, this is the stuff I love. That's why I used to love those papers. I love going to conferences where I can see real-world stuff, case studies, where you're looking at all these parameters. This is what we had, and this is what happened. I love that. So, yeah, that's good stuff. But thanks for having me on the show, guys.
Thank you very much. It's very much a big honor for both of us.
Thank you.
All right, guys. I'm disconnecting and walking over to the television side. You'll have a good week.
You too.
All right, you too.
Okay, thanks, James.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us, guys. That was James Spann. If you missed it, check out weatherbrains.com and also at Spann. That's Spann on Twitter. I think you can just search for James Spann on Facebook as well.
Yeah, and if you also just joined the podcast late and you want to see the whole archive, we'll have it up on YouTube, or it'll be archived at tvnweather.com/podcast. And wow, I was nervous to start that podcast.
He's a straight shooter. I love that guy.
He's a great guy.
He is.
I mean, and the stuff about the trust and integrity. I mean, everybody out there.
He's got it figured out.
Yeah, if you're a good person, good things happen to good people. And
we'll catch you next week.
And for all you people, too, out there, my mom always said, it's not about the money. If you love what you do for a living, you'll never work a day again in your life, and always follow your passion, and everything will come into place. And James Spann's the definition of passion. And his passion isn't about himself. It's about helping other people. And
truly is.
That's amazing.
He's an amazing guy. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll catch you guys next week.